Hello everyone, welcome to my review of the anime Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. Now Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains is the fifth spin-off from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise and seventh series in total, counting Season 0. Yu-Gi-Oh! is a franchise that revolves around a card game, and the show goes the isekai route with a few similarities to Ready Player One. A massive chunk of events taking place within this series is in virtual worlds, and unlike a lot of isekai, they're not stuck in that virtual world, as duelists can hop in and out of at any time. This helps to add another interesting element, as the characters who know each other in the virtual reality won't know who they are in the real world, or at least one won't know who the other is. Vrains is such a contrast from the other last two shows. It starts off with a much darker tone than Zexal and Arc 5 did at the beginning of their respective shows. However, does darker mean better? Let's find out. The first part of this review will be spoiler free, and then after that, I will be talking about some spoilers. And I will also be talking about the sub, not dub, as I will use sub names because that's what I watch. I did not watch the dub because, well, for one, it's kind of illegal for me to, since I'm in America and it's not available yet here. But we're not going to get into that. Anyways, let's get started. So we're going to start off by talking about the plot. The genre of the show itself goes on the full sci-fi route, which is unlike all the Yu-Gi-Oh shows in the past. Yes, there have been certain moments where they would use sci-fi elements, or they would sometimes have entire arcs be sci-fi, like how there's that filler arc in the the third season, of Yu-Gi-Oh, where they're in that virtual reality. So it does happen, but we've never had it be the full front of a series. And all the dueling takes place in this virtual reality called Link Vrains, which is run by the company Soltech. In Vrains, it's essentially like Ready Player One, but with card games, with people being able to make whatever avatars they want. However, it does not mean that one is safer than how they are in the other shows when they duel. However, as if you die in Vrains, then you die in the real world, and no, losing does not equal death, but with all the hazards and stuff inside the Link Vrains, death can happen without even dueling. The series also introduces a new summoning mechanic called Link Summoning, which is required to be able to extra deck spam, and for the first time in the game, makes a placement of the cards on the field essential part of the way the game is played. As Link monsters have arrows that point to a monster zone where you can special summon a monster from the extra deck. Oh yeah, with the new mechanic came a new extra card slot on the field, the extra monster zone. For cards in the extra deck, extra monsters can only be summoned there unless the Link arrow points to the monster zone. Then it's summoned there. Confused? Don't worry about that, okay? That was just a card game mumble jumble, and in the first two episodes acts like a tutorial, like all the past Yu-Gi-Oh series do, so you'll quickly get the hang of things. Do not be intimidated by what I just said. That was just some interesting background on the card game itself, how that's going to play into this generation. Furthermore, there is a new form of dueling that is illegal. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I am talking about speed duels, where the field only has 3 monsters and there's only 3 spell and trap zones, as opposed to the 5 on both sides that are in a traditional duel. However, there is also an extra deck monster zone, so I guess there's technically 4, but still. However, traditional duels still happen in Vrains, so don't need to worry. So basically, the speed dueling is Duel Links. The story starts out with an AI named Ignis being hunted down by a terrorist organization called the Knights of Hanoi. And no, this is not the Yu-Gi-Oh version of r/White Knights, alright? Their whole motivation is that they want to destroy Link Vrains as well as Ignis. However, Ignis is taken hostage first by Yusaku Fujiki, our series protagonist, and Yusaku uses the Ignis as a bargaining chip in his way to force the Knights of Hanoi to fight him head-on, as he has a vendetta against the Knights. Soltech is also wants the Ignis for their own reasons, which is unknown, at least during Season 1. So now that I've given you a very basic plot description, I'm sorry for it being super basic because I'm going to go ahead and get to the characters. So let's start out with our protagonist. Yusaku Fujiki. Uh, he's known in Link Vrains as Playmaker. And Yusaku is so different from other protagonists we've ever gotten. Every protagonist has been about so far been about friendship, bonds, all that good vibes. Yusaku's like, nah, screw that. I'm all about rage, vengeance, hatred. He has this anger towards the Knights of Hanoi, and he's the most quiet of the protagonists as he really doesn't talk much outside of, duels where you're explaining card effects and shenanigans. He's also pretty awkward when speaking in the real world. Honestly, though he is my favorite protagonist based on every main character of the first season, he is honestly a lot like Kaito from Zexal if he was a protagonist, and I absolutely love it. Also, he is good, like really good at the card game. He's actually the first protagonist that just outright dominate duels without having to rely on those one-off cards you'll never see again. Um, he also has very intense PTSD from something called the Lost Incident, which is something. If you're wondering why I didn't explain that in the plot, is because the Lost Incident is spoilers. So I did not want to go into that here. The other most significant character is the Ignis, an AI program that provides most of the comedic relief in the first season and is the central point of the plot for the first season. With the Knights of Inoue wanting to kill him, but Yusaku catches him first, making Ignis a hostage in his duel disk. And no, that is not a funny joke or summary. Yusaku literally uses the word hostage. To continue his crusade against the Knights, he does have a lot of funny moments, and even if he becomes overdramatic in some duels and it gets a little annoying, and also makes the duels really predictable in that sense. However, our next character is Blue Angel, or Aoi Zaizan, our female lead. Honestly, she's kind of an interesting character too. She is one of the top duelists in Vrains, and if I remember correctly, she was the #1 duelist in Vrains. As Blue Angel, she's cheery, optimistic character, like one would expect from the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise, and she has a bubbly personality come with it. However, in the real world, she's depressed and lonely. Honestly, I did not expect a character this deep, at least so early into the anime. Not only is she perfect representation of depression with masking it around others and putting an avatar on or a face or a wall ahead of him so no one can see how you really feel. But when you're alone, it's kind of a different story. Those walls just come down. As someone who has been battling depression for years, I really relate to Aoi. I have not felt so strongly connected to a Yu-Gi-Oh character since been a long time since Vrains. She also, I feel, is a representation of one of the more darker sides of the entertainment industry, more specifically idols in Japan. However, the show does not go as dark, as messed up as the real world version of it, but it still drives its points home. She's also the first female main character to run a meta deck with Trick Stars, as well as the character that shows the most growth in the positive way, other than the protagonist, of course. Another main character for season 1 that is worth talking about here, at least on the side of the good guys, is Go, a Link duelist with a wrestling gimmick. I know I said I would be talking about sub names, but here, honestly, I prefer the dub name. It just sounds like the dub and sub got their name slipped. Gore, which is his dub name, does not sound very kid-friendly at all. But then again, when I think of Gore, I think of spleens being bursted out, intestines clawed out, bones crushed to pieces. Sorry if my graphic depiction of a typical Slayer song traumatized you. Anyways, why am I going on about that? Well, honestly, I don't really like Go. He starts out as kind of the jackass that degrades into an asshole. His whole motivation at the start is the kids at the orphanage are more interested in Playmaker than him, and he's a salty little bitch about it. And later, his whole motivation for everything is trying to upstage Playmaker. To come to think of it, Vrains predicted the guy would start the first. Vrains predicted this guy, the guy who started the second ad apocalypse on YouTube. Um, but I mean, I feel that's what they were going for, with a character, with this character going on a downward spiral. So it's not that he's terribly written; it's just the fact that he's a character that I absolutely do not, I absolutely hate, and I kind of feel like that's what their intent. It's kind of hard to say what their intentions were on that, but honestly, with the way he's written, I kind of feel like that was deliberate. Now, the final main character of the hero side is Kusanagi. Musaku's only friend, and he's like the Alfred Pennyworth of the show. He takes care of all the hacking stuff while Yusaku's in the Vrains. He has a brother who is left in a very broken mental state after a lost incident, as he was one of 6 victims in that incident. Of course, he aids Playmaker in any way he can on their 2-man war against the Knights of Hanoi. He also has his base of operations doubling as a hot dog truck, which is actually pretty cool. Oh yeah, and then also I should mention that this series also has a very big obsession with the numbers of 6 and 3, which is something I forgot to mention earlier, and I'm sorry about that. But yeah, 6 and 3 are kind of big deals for the series. And also, well, not on the side of Playmaker necessarily, I have to bring up Awie's older brother, Akira Zaizen, who is the head of security at Soltech, and he has good intentions. He cares deeply for his sister and will go to any means necessary to keep her safe. He also works hard and is, even when he's not around Aoi a lot, which is a lot because obviously he's busy. If you're wondering why this is so short, it's because he's another really good Big Brother character. And Yugioh is really well at and really good at making these characters who are big brothers, whether they're big brothers to, you know, a younger brother, a younger sister, whatever. I mean, we've seen this throughout the franchise. You know, you go all the way back to Seto Kaiba. You can go to Reiji from Arc 5, Kaito from Zexal. You just get all these really well-written Big Brother characters. Excuse me a second, gotta take a drink here. Alrighty. Now, before we talk about our main villain, let's bring up a wildcard character. Emma, or Ghost Girl in Link Vrains. She is the Catwoman Black Cat of the show, who has an ulterior motive from our 2 sides. She herself is an expert hacker as well as a bounty hunter in the Vrains. She's very cunning, she always thinks 2 steps ahead, and she's very playful as well. So yeah, those fit all the traits of Emma being one female character that the fanboys will draw over the most in the series. Well, at least the first season, as well as that outfit she wears too. I see you. You close that Rule 34 tab right now. But yeah, she's a very fun character to watch. But I won't get into right now because of spoilers. But she's honestly, though, another really good character in the series. And now we are going to go on to our villain. Since the other ones are kind of spoilers, I will only be mentioning our main antagonist, Revolva. Revolva is a cunning mastermind who has everything planned out and is very similar to a Playmaker in a lot of ways. They're just on opposite sides of the conflict. Like Playmaker, he is great duelist and provides as a villain being actually threatening. Even when he's not on screen, you still feel the impact he has on the characters and on Link Vrains. Now going on to the duels. The duels themselves are very entertaining, and to me are the closest that any series has gone to look like how duels have in the real game, with the spamming the extra deck and the really long turns. Not counting Arc 5, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Will usually go the minimal route. Summon 1 Synchro and pass, summon an Xyz summon, set 1 and pass, etc. They're like very bare minimum turns that they'll usually do. Also, the duels are perfect in length with 1 to 2 episodes long, with the exception of 2 duels, which go on to 3. But one could argue one of them goes on to 5, but that's kind of what I'll talk about in the spoiler section. The animation in this series is solid. I mean, admittedly the CGI of the Link monsters at the start of the series kind of looked a little odd. It's not horrendous. I really don't have much to say. It's like not mind blowing animation like Violet Evergarden, but it's not like really terrible either. I mean, it's a nice looking anime. I mean, it's not gonna blow you away um, often. I mean, there are some really nice animated moments, but it's nothing like, you know, that's gonna make you scream, "Oh my gosh, this has got to be one of the best animated series I've ever seen." It's very serviceable, and it's also really solid animation for a series that is intended to be a long running one, and run nearly every single week of the year. So it does its job pretty well on that regard. And going into the music is great. The first opening is good and is probably the best first opening in the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise. And it was done by the same person who did the first opening for JoJo. So, yeah, so it is. You can expect it to be pretty good. And yes, that was a JoJo's reference. Um, the first ending is a decent J-pop number that has some that the ending goes the whole picture route, but it has some very good, nice drawn pictures. And I do prefer the second ending though. Um, it is a solid soft rock tune with its visuals becoming a little underwhelming in the chorus part of the song with its pictures, but the pictures, like at least in the verse, like right everything like in the first minute of it are just really awesome. Um, and also, why am I mentioning two endings? Because Vrains is a little weird, as it has two endings for the first season, but only one opening. The OST is also very solid too, as most OSTs are. Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually has a very criminally underrated soundtrack in the original version. And my personal favorite is Being Blue Angel's theme. And it has a very sporty feel to it with the hand claps. So yeah, the show overall has a great job with its tone and its contrast between Vrains and the real world, with Vrains being this adventurous, dangerous sci-fi world, while the real world is more mellow and even sad. However, this show is not without its faults. I have to mention one pressing issue I have with Vrains: the recap episodes. Because Vrains is a long-running show like a few shonens, airing nearly every week, there is some filler. The reason for the filler is due to them being behind in production episodes. And production as episodes are done in a few weeks in advance, and there's also a lot of crazy things happening behind the scenes, at least far early in the show, with the director stepping down and then a new director coming in. I think around like the 12 episode mark. The filler in this series is done in the form of recap episodes. Now there is like 6 to 7 recaps. Sometimes there will be recap episodes 6 episodes later, so you're getting a recap of a recap, which is honestly a little annoying. However, I'd rather take this over watching some one-off duel any day, especially since most filler duels, let's be honest, are utter garbage. But that's just my opinion. With the filler, Vrains is a 7.5 out of 10. However, since I'm not one to watch filler, as I'll provide a list of episodes to skip in the description, my official rating of Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains is a 9 out of 10. It has great character development, entertaining duels, intriguing villain, and great music. Now, I'm going to talk about spoilers. So if you want to not be spoiled on anything, click away now as I'll get into spoilers here. As I'll take my drink and then count down to 3. Alright, you ready? 3, 2, 1. My favorite duel in the show was Playmaker versus Aoi in episodes 6 to 7. It showcased off the potential, that showcased off Aoi's deck really well. and it really showed her like driving Playmaker into a bit of a corner. Um, Also, there's a lot of entertaining action going within this duel, um, and this is a duel that really made me like Aui's character a lot. Um, when they infected that virus into her, and then uh, yeah, when they infected the virus into her, it like you know made her like go all crazy, and then especially near the end when she just like started like crying out in pain. Um, so then they had to like finish it off as quick as possible. That kind of was a pretty emotional moment, especially with a lot of the symbolism at the end of the duel when Aoi actually loses, um, with her being an angel with broken wings. Ooh, that's it. Just gets really heavy there. It's probably the most biggest tear jerking moment in the entire first season, and honestly, it's honestly probably the biggest tear jerking moment since the last season of Zexal. Um, I should also mention one thing I didn't get to mention earlier was uh, Yusaku's best friend, Naoki. I don't even know why they call him his best friend. Yusaku clearly wants nothing to do with him. And he just gets roasted like in the third episode, which was really funny when Naoki's all like, notice me," and then Yusaku just gives him three reasons why he sucks. Um, See here. Also, there, if you love shipping, there was that really nice Ignis and Robokbi Careless Whisper moment in episode 4. I don't know why I did that. I'm sorry. Um, Another really important duel to talk about was the first match between Revolver and Playmaker. That's one thing I was asking about whether or not it'd be technically a long duel because, um, well, they do the speed duel, right? And it's like 2 episodes. Then they tie. Then immediately after they do the master duel, which is 3 episodes. So yeah, um, that's what I was asking about. Anyways, the duel is it's another really good duel. Um, it was very the first duel was between them was very back and forth, with uh, Revolver driving Playmaker toward, and then Playmaker fights back. Then Revolver goes, and it was just like very back and forth. And it seemed like Revolver had a counter for everything Playmaker did. But in the end, Playmaker was able to pull through with Firewall Dragon. Um, Now, another main villain I got to talk about here is Spectre. Spectre, otherwise known as the biggest tree lover in all of Yu-Gi-Oh. He is kind of the unhinged, ooh, I'm crazy villain. And he does this really well. The shots where he has like that crazy anime face where he's just like, the one where they're like have an evil smile and they're just like laughing maniacally, especially after he beat Aoi and she did that hard face plant to the ground. Um, that was a really well animated scene. It's also so satisfying to watch Playmaker beat him. I also can talk about the other villains, the three doctors, with the female doctor being a very sympathetic one, and they're all fairly decently written as far as one-off villains go. So that's not much to say on that. And then there's also Revolver's dad, who sort of is this like overhead figure running things. At least that's the way it looks in the first season. Um, Wait, why am I being ambiguous with this? It's spoilers. Um, Sorry about that. Where it's like revealed at the end of the season, he's like in a coma and then he dies to save Revolver from losing his arm, or rather reanimate his arm. Wow, that's the other thing I forgot to mention. A lot of people lose limbs in this show as well as die, so there's that. Um, so yeah, I thought that was a really interesting twist at the end. Um, there is also the Lost Incident where we learn that the 6 kids are these basically were just abducted and forced to duel in what is probably on the levels of Divine from 5D's levels of messed up. Just putting these kids like through traumatic experience for was essentially testing out these artificial intelligences, and that is honestly it was actually pretty dark and really messed up. As for Blue Angel, I just love the way that she was able to recover from her defeat in episode 6 to 7, and I just love the arc she went through. Um, Even if things didn't end so well for her, with her losing to Spectre, who was mocking her the whole time in that duel, and then just hitting that face plant. Ugh. Man, I do feel bad for her though. And then Go decides that he's going to take on Revolver, and it's the only time he doesn't act like a douche to Playmaker. And he does put up a decent fight, but then Revolver kind of wrecks him. So yeah, Emma was also I also liked how Emma had a reason to go to the good side near the end, with her discovering that Revolver has this terrifying new card, and also like how she, yeah, that's kind of my thought on that whole thing. Sorry if I'm a little awkward here. I'm just kind of thinking of everything that I need to talk about here. Her duel with Playmaker was pretty entertaining. What's also interesting is how in the rematch between Revolver and Playmaker, all that advice, all that like effort they get into like to exposing like Revolver's new terrifying card is just completely in Vrains. So they're like, oh no, we gotta worry about Mirror Force, and then like as soon as they actually duel, Mirror Force is no longer part of Revolver's strategy. So Emma and Go pretty much just died for nothing, which is a really interesting twist that really doesn't happen in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because in Yu-Gi-Oh! Usually when a character exposes, a terrifying new card the villain has, the hero will then win based off a strategy to counter that terrifying new card. And then the only other downside I think to Vrains, that might be a problem for those not familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that the path near the end does get linear, with it being pretty predictable. The only unpredictable duel in that final arc was Spectre versus Aoi, but once that happened, it was like you knew that Yusaku was going to beat Spectre. You knew that Go was going to lose to Revolver, and then you knew that Yusaku would beat Revolver. But yeah, all in all, though, I did really enjoy Vrains, and I'm currently catching up. I'm currently on episode 51 as the time as this recording, and honestly, I will hopefully I will be able to catch up and maybe do like weekly reviews or just even like the whole season. But yeah, those were my thoughts on Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. Did you like Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comments down below. Let me know what you thought of this review. Feedback is welcome, and thank you for sticking by and watching this really long video. I appreciate it, because I know that not everyone can take out this much time in their day to watch, this. And if you chose to stick with me till the end, thank you. I would also highly recommend checking out the channel Dylan. Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything. He covers a lot of the anime stuff, and he does it far better than I could. And he has been doing these Vrain reviews he's been reviewing weekly since Arc 5, but he's been doing Vrain reviews since the beginning. Reviews and like cast lists and all that stuff, and he's just a really awesome friend that you should all check out. With that all being said, thank you for watching my review, and I hope you all have a great day.